At least one person was killed and several wounded after an armed group attacked Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry. In the United States, President Joe Biden signed a defense bill that defies Beijing by inviting Taiwan to military exercises in the Pacific. Sudanese Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok resigned after deadly protests in less than 2 months after having signed a political agreement with the military. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. At least one person was killed and several wounded after an armed group attacked Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry. The incident took place in the Haitian city of Gonaives during an attack by an armed gang against the Prime Minister Ariel Henry and his entourage, leaving a church after the service of a mass in commemoration of the 218th anniversary of the independence. The person, whose identity is unknown, was killed in the middle of the shooting between members of an armed gang in the Raboros sector and the security forces that protected Henry and other officials, according to Haitian media. Due to the failed attack against Henry, the other events that were scheduled by the commemoration of the independence of Haiti from France were cancelled. And Jamaica will deport Colombian national Marco Antonio Palacios, prime suspect in the July 7th assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse. A court in Jamaica decided that Palacios should be deported to Colombia on January 3rd, instead of being extradited to Haiti as requested by the Haitian authorities. Colombian ex-military officer Palacios, subject to an Interpol arrest warrant, was arrested in mid-October in Jamaica after 3 months on the run. The assassination of former Haitian President Jovenel Moïse has allegedly carried out by a commando made up of former Colombian army personnel, plus other suspects with links to the Drug Enforcement Agency and also the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, in an interview granted to the Spanish journalist and intellectual Ignacio Ramonet, addressed issues of common interest, in which he reflected upon the adverse situation generated by the coercive measures imposed by the United States.
These elections are not easy because the blockade and the sanctions have created problems in public services, problems in the daily life of the people, and a part of the population does not understand that it is because of sanctions, and has created confusion and discomfort in part of the population, which is not what they are looking for. What the American imperialism looks for when it squeezes a country and tries to crush it, as it has done with Venezuela, is creating confusion, annoyance, and protest. That is what they are looking for with their unilateral coercive measures, the persecution of economy, the public finances, and trade.
President Maduro accused the Washington government of sabotaging the dialogues that were being held in Mexico with the country's opposition.
Say that we were already entering into the big issues, topics like re-institutionalization of Venezuela, of the economy, of the criminal sanctions, of everything. I mean the life of a country. And once again, when we were already entering into the big issues that had been pre-agreed, when we were going to give good and great news for the country, once again the government of the United States, the State Department, took an action that they knew beforehand was going to provoke the breakdown of the dialogues. Do you think it was sabotage? I think it was sabotage. I expressly think so. I have no doubt that it was sabotage by the government of the United States against the dialogues in Mexico, because we talked about it with the government of the United States.
President Maduro made a balance of his government's management as well as the management of the pandemic.
This year, 2021, the Brazilian variants arrived here. The two Brazilian variants, the most lethal Delta variant arrived here. They all entered through Colombia and Brazil. And now we have just detected the Omicron variant. We have maintained in relation to the world an exemplary control over the pandemic, especially what they call the developed world, the United States, Europe, and all those countries regarding infections and deaths and percentages too. We have used the 7+7 method when we started to advance in vaccination. We had already vaccinated 40% of the population We restarted on-site classes and we also allowed flexibility with biosecurity measures, but total flexibility. This is how November and December have worked, and it has been spectacular, with people in the streets, in public squares, boulevards, parks, parties. It has been a truly tremendous Christmas. People are happy, and despite the great movement of people, our people take care of themselves. They really take care of themselves.
In economic matters, the president reported a growth of more than 7% in the last half in 2021.
We eliminated 6 zeros from the Bolivar, and from a psychological point of view, we strengthened the management of the Bolivar. Within a general framework of economic improvement, the launching of the digital Bolivar, our digital currency, has been very well accepted by the population as a result of this set of measures. In a systematic, sustained, and coherent manner, the Venezuelan economy is now in a clear period of recovery. I can tell you that we have recovered economic growth, and in the second semester of the year 2021, we are having an economic growth of 7.5%. This means that the economy, with its own engine, with its own strength, the real economy, has taken the path of economic growth. This is the great news, the non-oil economy.
Now we move on to other topics. The Argentinian Nobel Peace Prize winner Adolfo Pérez Esquivel, who suffered at a compensation this Sunday in Campo de Mal and was hospitalized in the city of Mar del Plata, is in stable condition, according to the medical report. According to the Peace and Justice Service, after taking the Argentinian activist and artist's blood pressure and as well as other vital signs and giving him medication, he was reported as stable and will be under observation for 24 hours. Several local media had affirmed that the 90-year-old Nobel Peace Prize winner had suffered from this neurological affectation. However, this information was discarded after medical studies. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. Thousands of people were forced to flee in the face of increasingly severe flooding caused by torrential rains in 7 Malaysian states, which have already displaced 125,000 residents in total since mid-December. About 50 people have so far lost their lives in the floods, and 2 others are missing, according to the police sources. The Asian country suffers from flooding every year, which regularly generates massive evacuations. But the authorities were caught off guard by non-stop rains that began on December 17th, causing flooding and inundating the cities. Selangor, the country's richest and most densely populated state, which surrounds the capital Kuala Lumpur, is one of the worst affected regions. Some 117,000 people evacuated since mid-December were able to return to their homes, but about 10,000 others had to take refuge in relief centers, according to official data. In the United States, several kilometers of beaches were closed after a massive sewage spill from drains in Los Angeles. In a statement issued by the city of Long Beach, authorities explained that the incident occurred after the 48-inch sewer main line failed, sending millions of gallons into the Dominguez Channel, which flows into the port of Los Angeles. They also said that the temporary closure will be carried out on 7 miles of their beaches. Los Angeles County Supervisor Janice Hahn warned of the danger posed by a spill of this magnitude and called for an investigation of the pipes and sewers to determine whether they were defective. In the United States also, President Joe Biden signed a defense bill that defies Beijing by inviting Taiwan to military exercises in the Pacific. The United States National Defense Authorization Act for 2022, signed into law on Monday by President Joe Biden, provides for continued U.S. military support for Taiwan amid tension between the island and Beijing, which considers it an integral part of China. The text proposes to invite Taiwan to the world's largest naval exercise in 2022, called Rim of the Pacific. In response of the announcement, Chinese military expert Song Xiongping said that Taiwan's participation in international exercises would increase the risk of war in the region. In Russia, at least 5 people were killed and 21 others were injured in a bus accident in the Ryazan region of Russia. According to the regional traffic police, a bus crashed into a railway bridge abutment at 5:45 a.m. local time this Sunday. A total of 49 passengers were in the vehicle. According to initial reports, the driver reportedly lost control of the bus. The accident occurred on a highway near the village of Boslevovo, about 270 kilometers south of Moscow, according to the officials. And Finland doesn't rule out the possibility of becoming a new member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in the near future, despite warnings from Russia. The Prime Minister of Finland, Sanna Marin, recalled that this decision is part of the right of each country to choose its own security policies. A similar message was expressed by Finnish President Sauli Niinisto, who also underlined that Finland's freedom of choice also includes the possibility of military alignment. The Russian government has repeatedly warned that a possible adherence of such countries to Ukraine, Finland and Sweden to NATO will lead to serious military and political consequences that Moscow will not leave unanswered. Central banks around the world are placing their bets one more time on gold versus the dollar as the reserve in their vaults. According to data compiled by the Japanese daily Nikkei Asia from specialized firms, gold reserves in the world's central banks have reached their highest value in 31 years. These organizations have increased their reserves by more than 1,500 tons of their precious metal in the last decade. According to the experts, by the month of September, the reserves totaled some 36,000 tons, an amount up to 15% higher than the previous decade, and they estimate that the monetary expansion of the last decade has caused a significant loss in the value of their currency against gold. Now we address other topics. Bolivia received a donation of almost 2 million doses of anti-COVID-19 vaccines. The batch of vaccines arrived through a German and Spanish donation through the COVAX mechanism. On Saturday, a batch of 1,965,000 doses of the Moderna anti-COVID-19 vaccine arrived in Bolivia. With this batch of doses, the Andean nation has more than enough to immunize 100% of its population with a complete scheme. The reception took place at a time when the country reported over 3,500 new cases of coronavirus, the highest peak of infections since the beginning of the pandemic. According to the Vice Minister of Foreign Trade, Benjamin Blanco, Bolivia has 22.5 million doses with a new shipment. However, health authorities are concerned because in spite of the availability of the jabs, there is a significant resistance of the population to be immunized, and only 48% of the population received 2 doses.
These doses are a donation from both the government of Spain and the government of Germany. On the part of Spain, we are receiving 1,493,000 doses, and on the part of the government of Germany, we are receiving 473,000 doses. With this that has just arrived, we have already reached 22.5 million doses, more than the 22.5 million doses, which is enough for 100% of the population over 5 years of age, and to guarantee the booster dose too.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok resigned after deadly protests in less than 2 months after having signed a political agreement with the military. On Sunday, the minister said a roundtable discussions is needed to come to a new agreement. Hamdok, a former United Nations official seen as the civilian face of Sudan's transitional government, was reinstated in November amid international pressure. That deal, however, was rejected by the pro-democracy movement, which insists that power be handed over to a fully civilian government tasked with leading the transition. Thousands of Sudanese pro-democracy protesters rallied Sunday outside the presidential palace in Khartoum, braving tear gas, a mass deployment of armed soldiers, and a telecommunications blackout. Internet and cell phones have not worked since the morning, and security forces were perched on armored vehicles with heavy machine guns watching passers-by.
I have decided to announce my resignation, paving the way for another man or woman from the people of our generous country to carry on the leadership of our beloved country.
On Sunday, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said that one person is in custody in connection with the fire at the country's parliament building in Cape Town and promised a thorough investigation. Ramaphosa's statements follow the arrest of the supposed arsonist that started a large fire that severely damaged the parliament building in the South African country and also in the city of Cape Town. Officials said the fire started on some offices in the third floor and quickly spread to the parliament's lower house chamber. A team of 30 firefighters who first arrived at the scene battled the flames for several hours before being forced to retreat and called for reinforcements. Some 80 firefighters were later deployed, some using a crane to spray water on the blaze. The flames came hour after Archbishop Desmond Tutu's state funeral at St. George's Cathedral near the parliament. So far, no casualties have been reported.
Of course, we are still going to go into what caused the fire, and the fire having started in the old assembly, how it then moved to the National Assembly, is something that will still be investigated. I believe somebody is being held right now and they are being questioned, but we need to go a lot deeper into how this type of event can take place and what measures we will need to take going forward.
Libya is facing a grave situation of illegal migrants as the political instability is now stretching into 2022, said Ahmed Hamza, head of Libya's National Commission for Human Rights on Friday. Hundreds of thousands of migrants are in Libya living in dire conditions, which include abuse, sexual assault, and trafficking, while waiting for the right moment to find a way into Europe. The International Organization for Migration, the IOM, estimated that at least 1,500 migrants drowned in the central Mediterranean in 2021, and more than 30,000 have been intercepted or rescued. According to Hamza, stopping migrants from moving to Europe, the route must be addressed, and there must be a comprehensive strategy which aims to develop nations, people, and achieve stability. As division remains in Libya, Europe has been reluctant to send rival governments most of the help it promised.
There is an estimated 700,000 to 800,000 migrants in Libya. They are clustered in Libya's northern coastal cities and southern border cities. We should support Libyan authorities to improve its ability to control its southern border. To stop these waves of huge numbers of migrants, there must be a comprehensive strategy which aims to develop nations, people, and achieve stability.
More than 80 Palestinians were injured on Saturday amid Israeli repression in the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian Red Crescent reported that 88 Palestinians were injured by the Israeli military repression in areas of Burqa village near the city of Nablus. The doctors said that most of those affected had inhaled tear gas. Attacks by Israeli military and settlers against Palestinian population are being carried out in Burqa region for the third consecutive week. Protesters in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul, called on Sunday for the international community to recognize the Taliban government. The Taliban took over the country in August after sweeping aside the Afghan armed forces and forcing the former Western-backed government to step down. No country has yet officially recognized the new government due to the militants' previous track record. When the Taliban last controlled Afghanistan almost 20 years ago, they banned women and girls from education and public life, mandated births from men and attendance at prayers, outlawed sport and entertainment, and executed people in public. But current Taliban government officials said their rule will be different, including eventually allowing education for all the girls, and have called on the international community to release the funds and help stave off a humanitarian disaster.
These people want the current government to be accepted. This government should be accepted by the world because it is the government of the Afghans. These people.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.